definitions, do a lot of examples, and go from there. So let's look at this concept of limits. If we look at limits, again, intuitive, we know what limits are. Y equals x squared, we know that's the nice parabola. The origin is the vertex. And I want to look at this little point right here. Well, this little point right here happens to be the ordered pair 2, 4. Notice my graphs are not to scale, but close enough. And what we want to talk about this limit, and in this particular case, it's a fairly, it's probably a little bit too simple example. I'm asking the question on the graph, and I'm looking at all these little ordered pairs along here on the graph, as x gets closer and closer to 2, what happens to y? Well, there's a nice little thing that's going on here. If I get closer and closer and closer to 2, if I look at ordered pairs that are closer and closer and closer to 2, the x component is closer and closer to 2, it's pretty obvious that the y value is getting closer and closer and closer to 4. And that not only happens from the left-hand side, it also happens from the right-hand side. Now, we can see that numerically if we just make a little chart. Let's look at a nice little chart here. Let's look at some x values. Let's say 1.98, 1.99, 2, 2.01, 2.02. Let's look at these values because these are some values that are pretty close to 2 from the left-hand side. And these are some values that are pretty close to 2 coming in from the right-hand side, 2.1, 2.01, 2.202, 2.012. And let's look at the function that was y equals x squared. Now, I'm going to need my calculator here to get some value. You don't have to go to the calculator. Let me just do 1.98 squared. Oops, I got to turn the calculator on. 1.98 squared is 3.9204. And 1.99 squared is 3.9601. Now, notice I said as I get closer and closer and closer to 2. I didn't say anything about actually getting to 2, so I'm just going to hold off on this value right here because as far as the limit's concerned, that value really is not that important. Let's try 2.01 and square it, and I get 4.0401. And if I get 2.02 and square it, I get 4.0804. Now, notice as I'm above 2, I'm getting values a little bit above 4. And if I'm below 2, I'm getting values that are a little bit below 2, but they're getting closer and closer to 2, 3.92, 3.96. Well, obviously, we know 2 squared is 4. What we're looking at as at a limit is if I go from the the left-hand side, which are the numbers less than 2, and if I come in from the right-hand side, which are the numbers a little bit greater than 2, if I get closer and closer to 2, is there a little target number in there that I'm going to hit? Well, if I look at it numerically,